How are you doing, people? Welcome to the Dr. Will Show, and I am your host, Dr. Will. After seeing a show on Saturday, I bet you didn't expect another one on Monday night. But I have Kerry Gallagher here, and quite honestly, this is how we roll. We kind of get on Twitter and say, "You want to do a show?" Yeah, when? Boom, and it happens that quickly. So we will be talking about the connected educator. And again, my guest is Kerry Gallagher. And if you don't know who whom she is, you have been hibernating somewhere. She is all over the place, doing it big time. So welcome to this. Welcome back for the third time, Kerry. How are you doing?
I'm good. It's good to see you and chat with you again. For
Excellent.
sure.
Excellent. For those again who, for some reason, they they don't know who you are, will you introduce yourself to the people?
Sure. Okay, so Kerry Gallagher, as Dr. Will has already said. I teach in Reading, Massachusetts. I've been teaching for about 13 years, half my career in middle school, half in high school, and most well known online right now as paperless high school history teacher. But more recently, my passion is student tech teams. I started a student tech team in my school called Rockets Help Desk. We're a BYOD school, so we're a little bit different than a lot of other tech teams that are often based in one-to-one districts or one-to-one schools. Also have had lots of opportunities to speak recently at conferences all over the country, from Florida to California to, right here in Massachusetts. And looking forward to going to ISTE and seeing Dr. Will, among others there, who had opportunity to talk to a lot online but never actually met in person. So there are good things to come.
Awesome, awesome. So let's get to it. How do you define the term connected educator, and how has being or becoming a connected educator impacted the learning in your classroom?
Okay, so I think being a connected educator is something that I'm constantly working at. I don't see it as something that you arrive at, and I'm not sure I'll ever really get to a point where I'm happy with exactly the way all my connections are functioning. I think a connected educator is someone who understands that it's a constant process. When you're connected, you're not just connected with people online via, Twitter or Google Plus or Voxer, any of those other networking apps. You also have to make a concerted effort to remain connected within your own school. And I think one of the things that many teachers can agree on is that education is an isolating profession. We spend a lot of time in our classrooms with our students and not enough time together really connecting about our practice. So more recently, I have put a concerted effort into making sure that I am making those connections within my school that are just as deep as the connections with people from far away. And it sounds kind of counterintuitive to have deeper connections with people from farther away than in your own school. But when you're in that building all day and you never actually get to have a deep conversation with the person in the classroom next to you about teaching practice, it can be tough. So I think connected educators understand the balance of connecting with people online and also connecting with people at the classroom next door.
Okay, so in reflection and learning as you have with everyone, how would you say that has impacted how you teach and how your students learn?
Yeah, okay, so really good question. That's right. That was the second part I forgot. I think one of the initial impacts that was very obvious was the lesson ideas that I was getting from online. I think that the first people that I followed on Twitter early on in my participation there were not just people who were interested in integrating technology, but people who I admired as history teachers who had deep history knowledge and who were very thoughtful about the way that they taught. And so, for instance, over the past couple of years, I've brought in blackout poetry into my classroom as a way to analyze primary sources. I've networked quite a bit with the DBQ project online, in addition to networking with them in person and integrating document-based questions into my class. So, those are just two examples of actual teaching practice that I have improved and honed through conversations with people online. But additionally, as I make more and deeper connections, I can bring those people into my classroom to also work with my students. Sometimes I'll find someone who's a real expert on something that definitely is something we talk about in my classroom and makes sense for my students to talk to that expert. For instance, earlier this year, I connected with the Museum of Science and Industry in Manchester, England, and we spend a big chunk of the first part of the first quarter on the Industrial Revolution, and so we did a Google Hangout with a curator from that museum in my class. And so I brought an expert on this topic from another country into my classroom for a day, and the kids are still talking about it. We just went to the New England One-to-One Conference in Burlington, and that was one of the things that my students made sure that they told me they wanted to bring up to talk to other teachers about, that was memorable for them, even though it was way back in September. You know, my student tech team has had the opportunity to do Google Hangout interviews with leaders in the ed tech industry from ed tech companies that are really making a difference today, like Rashawn Richards from Explain Everything. They've spoken to via video chat. They've spoken to Swaroop Raju from Educator, and these are apps that they use every day in the classroom, and now they've spoken to the creators about, you know, why they made them and what they were thinking. And so these conversations are getting them to think not just about what it's like to work in that industry, but where people come up with ideas, what inspires them. So my connections have led to connections for my students, and has kind of, I like to say it like breaks down the walls of our classroom. So they're never limited to learning in our classroom. If they ask to connect with an expert, I do my best to use my connections to connect them with those experts. So being a connected educator really has benefited my students, I feel.
Hey, I want to be in your class. That sounds awesome. Describe your day-to-day as a connected educator, and what do you say to those teachers who say, I don't, you know, they just don't have time?
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, I can't say that I've been consistent on Twitter the whole time that I've been on it. I definitely have faded in and out over the years. More recently, the past couple of years, I've been more consistent. I think it has to do with that work-life balance. I know for myself, I am very consistent now, but it has had a lot to do with my children's ages and what's going on with me. So when I had just given birth and I was on maternity leave with both of my kids, I kind of dropped back from Twitter a little bit because, you know, I wasn't even sleeping, never mind reading tweets, right? But, you know, once I got back to work in both cases, you know, I was right back in there. I think as teachers, we have these schedules that are still, you know, I mentioned the Industrial Revolution again, but it reminds me of that, like the bells that tell you where to be and when to be there, and, you know, the 20-minute lunches that we have, if you get it. And so where do you find time during the day to check Twitter? Like, how could you possibly do that? And the only thing I could say is, I can't imagine not fitting it in, because if I didn't, there would be a part of my learning every day that's missing. And every day I find something that I end up mentioning to my students or mentioning to my colleagues or sharing with someone that makes a difference to them. And every day I find something certainly that challenges my own thinking. And so if I wasn't doing that, I would kind of be, you know, teaching the same way every year and not really changing it up and changing my thinking. So, you know, what does it look like every day? It looks like, you know, I wake up and generally I check my phone for notifications before I even get out of bed. Maybe some people might be uncomfortable with that and think that that's a little crazy, but I don't necessarily respond to those notifications. I check them, and then while I'm kind of getting ready, I'm thinking about them, and it's getting my brain in the right mode to get started for my day. And those notifications are generally like, you know, emails I got overnight from students, or Twitter notifications, or you know, something like that. So it's getting me to think about what my day is going to be about and what I'm going to think about. And then I don't really look at it again until I get to school, and I have a few minutes before homeroom starts where I can respond to some of those emails and, you know, maybe check my Feedly and read through a couple of blogs quickly. And then, you know, once I'm teaching, I'm teaching. That's it. Like, the students get my full attention. I don't want anyone to think that I am not giving them attention because of my connections outside of the school building. But then, like I said, it's being a connected educator has become such a common part of my practice that I'm bringing in these people from outside to my daily classroom practice all the time. So the connection is not really separate from school. It's a part of how I teach. It's a part of how I share with my students, sharing these blog posts that I'm reading with them, sharing a tweet that I found that is interesting with them. So yeah, like I said, it's just kind of a part of the way I function. It's a part of the way I teach and learn myself every day.
Excellent. Now, just recently, I spoke at a conference on teachers using social media to develop a personal learning network. And just in general, I can't tell you the number of times that I have mentioned to teachers that, look, you need to get on Twitter, and they give me that look like, come on, man. And what do you, I mean, when you meet educators and you start talking to them about Twitter, what do you say to them when they talk to you about it and they think Twitter is just about, you know, finding out did Justin Bieber get arrested or what Beyonce ate for breakfast?
Yeah. I mean, Twitter can be that, right? Like, it can, if that's what you want it to be, but that's kind of the beauty of it. Like, it is whatever you want it to be. So as long as you're attentive to how you curate those you follow and those you don't follow, then it can obviously be incredibly valuable. And the power of Twitter is not in how many people you follow or how many people follow you. It's how you choose who you follow and how you manage it. Like when I first started out and I was only following a few hundred people, I thought this is all I could manage. I could never manage more than this because how could I keep up? And I think one of the early user common mistakes is thinking that you have to go back and check everything that you missed since last time you were there. And that is not at all what Twitter is meant to be. You check it when you can, you use what you can get, and the good stuff pops up a lot, so don't worry about missing it because it'll come back. You're shaking your head vigorously. You agree?
Yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah. And I think the same goes for like Google Plus or Voxer conversations that you're a part of. If you look back and it's overwhelming for you to try to, listen to every single Vox that's been left or every single link that's been posted on Google Plus, then don't. Like, the good stuff will come back. It's not like the only stuff that's posted on Twitter today are links to things that were written today. There's links to things that were written in 2012 that were posted today, that were articles that I've seen a million times before, but someone just discovered them and was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing, needs to be shared. And, I got to reread it this time. But somebody who missed it last time maybe, gets to see it for the first time. And there's a shift in thinking now in 2015 because of something someone said in 2012, and that's okay. But I do have to say, it's funny that "come on, man" thing that you said for a long time at my school, that whenever we would walk out of a meeting, my department head would be like, all right, there's Kerry Hako too. She's going to go tweet out what we talked about at our meeting. And they would all like roll their eyes and kind of laugh at me. And so for a long time, I just let it go and I laughed with them. But now they're starting to see how the connections that I was building over those few years slowly, I didn't jump in head first to Twitter. I've been building my PLN slowly over time. How it's bearing fruit, because now I'm being asked to speak at conferences and I'm being asked to write articles for EdSurge, and so they're like, oh, maybe this is a thing, and I'm starting to get more questions about it. So for those of you who are connected and are eager to get others connected, give them time. I know it's frustrating because we all want our students to benefit from things now, right? But we have to give people the time that they need to buy in and just start. My advice would be just share with them all the cool stuff that you're seeing online, and do it kind of quietly and subtly, and then you'll start getting questions and you'll start getting people to buy in.
Okay, so since they're starting to come over and say, okay, Kerry, we're feeling you. We now see the light. Mm-hmm. What are some of the benefits and or drawbacks to being a connected educator?
I mean, the benefits are, I think about the way I teach, and I think about my students' experiences, and more than I ever have before. Because there's always someone trying something that I never would have thought of, that I wonder how I can fit it into my classroom. Or, I'm reflecting on a lesson that didn't go the way I wanted, and I know I can be honest with the people I've connected with and ask them, what they think and how it could improve. So I'm thinking more. The other benefits are kind of the perks, like getting to being asked to travel somewhere to speak, it's not Twitter alone that did that. It's how I interacted with Twitter and how I built those relationships. I don't want people to think like you get on Twitter and somebody pays for you to go fly somewhere. Like, that's not how it works. You have to give as much as you take in order to build that. But the drawbacks are, you have to really find a balance, and it can be challenging because you build these connections with these people who you don't actually see. You have to remember, like I said before, to make sure you're building strong connections with the people you do see every day at work. And of course, your family. I mean, you can't let social media overtake your commitment to your family. That goes without saying. So the drawbacks are finding that balance. And I think that maybe is what holds some people back from getting on to social media. They're worried that, my family life and my work life are already so busy. How can I fit this thing in? And I think that everybody has to strike a different kind of balance, and that is one of the drawbacks that many people struggle with. But everybody has to find that like sweet spot for themselves.
Mm-hmm. So, what are your 3 ingredients, if you will, that make up an effective strategy for connecting with people or for building a dynamic PLN?
Okay, so more is not better. That's got to be the first one. It's connecting with quality resources, not a ton of resources, especially to start out. Find blogs that you find really intriguing, people who push your thinking, and hook yourself to their coattails and follow them. And for a while, you may feel like a little too shy to interact with them, but before you start building a huge group of people that you follow online, start interacting with those people and getting feedback from them to get a feel for how to connect online, because connecting is not just following people, it's also interacting with them. So I would say the first 2 tips are more is not better, and make sure you start interacting early. Like, don't be a stalker for a really long time and build a huge PLN without actually talking to anybody, right? And the third one would be make sure that you're not just, when you're out there, you're not just interacting by asking questions, but you're putting yourself out there a little bit. And I think that that's kind of the hardest barrier for people to break. They'll go online and they'll follow people, right? The stalking, which is okay to start on Twitter, perfectly acceptable. Then they'll start interacting by asking questions, but putting out a little piece of yourself and being really open about your own practice is intimidating. But once you do that, you'll find that the benefits or the rewards that you reap from being honest and putting yourself out there like that, that's really where the changing happens.
Mm-hmm. And what I want to throw out there is don't fall for the name game. And what I mean by that is, think of it like choosing a college. Now, there are some people, they just want the Ivy League. They just want that Ivy League degree, and they'll do anything for it. It's all about, I went to Harvard, I went to Brown, I went all of that. Mm-hmm. And then they get on Twitter, and it's like Eric Schenninger and Todd Whitaker and Angela Myers and all these people. And look, these are great people, and I'm not in no means saying, don't follow them. Yeah. What I am saying is, don't fall into the name game of these people are famous, and I got to gobble up everything they say. When in fact, again, just like choosing a college, if you're not getting what you need professionally, personally, or whatever you're trying to get from Twitter, then a name means squat.
Right. And when you follow those big name people, it's okay if you disagree with them when they put something out there, right? They've built huge followings from expressing opinions that are sometimes not popular and getting a conversation going, right? So don't think that just because they're the lead names who have the big followings that they're always right. Like you said, you have to get out of the interaction what it is that you need in your classroom practice or in your administrative practice at that time. So yeah, don't fall there. Some of the people I have learned the most from do not have that K with their follower numbers after it. The K meaning in the tens of thousands. So it's those people that you named. Of course, I follow them, and of course they're interesting. And some of them I interact with on a regular basis, but it's not really about who you're interacting with. It's how you're interacting that matters the most.
Oh yeah. I need to find some different examples, because every time I talk and I bring out examples, it's always like those 4 people. I need to find some other folks. So I want them going like, Will, you're putting salt in my game, Will. So now I want to do that. So when you think of your long-term goals, for being a connected educator, do you see it as a pathway to other avenues outside of teaching, such as writing books or speaking at conferences or consulting, or is it a way for you to become a better classroom teacher?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a way for me to become a teacher. Like, I never joined Twitter thinking that this is it, this is my big break. Like, that's not it at all. I mean, I like to write, I like to speak at conferences. I certainly don't do consulting professionally at this point in my career. I'm consulting with my colleagues via email. I just gave one of my colleagues is presenting at a conference coming up, and she wants to make it more interactive, and she and I have been going back and forth. I've been trying to teach her about Padlet so that she can use it to make it a more interactive experience for her session participants. I have another teacher who came to me to ask me about QR codes recently, and so I'm doing consulting in that way, but that's not really why I'm on Twitter. I guess really I'm on Twitter selfishly because I get a lot out of it. Like I said, even when you share a little bit of yourself, the reaction that you get back helps you self-evaluate, helps you improve your practice. I will say right here, right now, I certainly want my career to move forward, but I do not ever want it to be to a place where I don't interact with teenagers on a regular basis, because they are the awesomest people on the planet, and they are the reason that I do what I do. And when I do stay connected, it's because I believe that what I gain from those connections really does help me in my practice with them every day. So like I said, I'm not really on there because it's like a big break or it's a pathway to something. It has resulted in some benefits, which are really fun, and I feel like I've learned a lot from them, but that's just kind of a bonus. So
now, you have a strong presence on social media, and with that has come notoriety, gravitas, and some other opportunities. And you and I have had this conversation because you you're out there and you are known as the paperless classroom person. Mm-hmm. And you were saying how I'm more than that. There are some other things I'm interested in, some other things that I want to do. How do you think being connected impacts an educator's ability to take ownership of who they are and to define their own voice? It's particularly when people have their opinions, they have their expectations of you based upon other things that you've done.
Yeah, there's this big movement in ed tech lately about branding, like personal branding, and I have kind of mixed feelings about it. Like I certainly want people in my PLN to know who I am and what I stand for, but I want them to know who I am. I don't want them to know a brand, like the paperless teacher, right? I've chosen to go paperless because I believe it helps forge stronger connections between my students and myself, between my students and their classmates, and between my students and the content. I haven't chosen to go paperless so that I could become known as the paperless teacher. Like that, I wasn't doing it to establish a brand. So I don't actually think I agree with the branding movement, at least on the surface, because I think it takes away the human element of education, which is by far the most important element of education. If you do not know your students and they do not know you in an honest way, you will not be able to teach them anything. So yeah, when people come to me as the authority on paperless teaching, like, of course I'm happy to share my practice, but I'm much more anxious to ask them why they want to go paperless and what they think it will accomplish and how it's going to benefit their classroom before I'm going to start talking about workflow. And you know, it's the same thing with anything that I am or will ever be known for. It's always about why first. How is it going to help student learning? How is it going to help your professional practice before we start talking about the how? So yeah, I think being connected helps you get to be known as one thing, but you also get to take control of your reputation by moving the conversation in the direction that you want it to move. And like I said, changing your PLN around a little bit. Like maybe you feel like if you've become a paperless teacher, you're only following people who are into that paperless movement. You feel like you've kind of mastered it, you're ready to move on to something else. Maybe you need to change your PLN and start following people who are specializing in, I don't know, what's another big movement right now, personalized learning. Maybe that's something you want to really delve into. And so you start following more people and your feed starts popping up with topics that you're interested in as you shift your practice and develop yourself as an educator. So being connected, can help you establish a reputation, but it can also help take control and shift that reputation, if you'd like.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So before we get out of here,
Mm-hmm.
We've sort of, you've mentioned Twitter, you mentioned Voxer and Google+. Which platforms do you recommend for teachers to use, particularly if, they're just starting out, and which is your favorite?
Oh, which is my favorite? Because they're different. I'm on Twitter the most, I would say. But Twitter, I guess I would start with Twitter, and I would start by talking to someone, an educator that you know and trust who is on Twitter, to ask them like who you should follow. And I would also start, once you've been following people and kind of watching for a week or two, I would ask which chat should I start with, and I would start Twitter by first getting a group of people who are like your foundation to follow, and then starting to add followers on your own. But then I would also join a chat. And I'm not a consistent chat participant. I pick them up when I happen to see them. I've been loyal to some chats for periods of time, and then I kind of drop off. It's hard to commit to the same time every day or the same time every week. And I'm bad at TV shows for that reason too. So Twitter chat people shouldn't be insulted. I'm bad at anything that's the same time every week. It's impossible when you have little kids at home. But then I would say Twitter is what got me into Voxer, because I started developing deeper relationships with some of the people in my PLN on Twitter, and I wanted to speak to them on a more personal basis. And Voxer seemed like the next logical step. And so that's how I got into Voxer. It's like, for those of you who don't know, it's often compared to a walkie-talkie, except they're recorded conversations, and they can be between very small groups of people. I'm in a Vox chat with just one other history teacher that I work with, and she and I plan lessons on it at night, because we never actually get to see each other during the day because we don't have common planning time. And I'm on Voxer chats with the 2015 PBS Learning Media Digital Innovators. This group, it was just publicized that I was one of the 100. So there's probably 30 of us in there so far, but we expect that group to grow to hopefully the full 100. I'm in the BFC 5:30 chat. So that's a chat that's on Twitter every morning at 5:30 a.m. And there's a corresponding Voxer group, which is very big. So I'm in that one. So I'm in, Voxer groups of varying size. So, and you can choose how you want to use Voxer that way. Whether you want to not join the big groups at all, stick to small groups. And then Google Plus is different. Google Plus is kind of cool because you can join these groups in Google Plus where they're talking about topics that really interest you. Like you probably have a GEG group for Mississippi, right, that you run on Google Plus, and I'm in the Massachusetts one. And there's lots of other groups. So I would join Google+, but then you have to really look for the groups in Google+ that interest you, and that's where you're going to get the most out of Google+, in those groups. I don't know. What do you think about Google+? That's my take on it based on my experience.
I love Google+, and part of the reason I love it is with Twitter, because of the 140 character limit, there is only excuse me, so much of a conversation you can have, and that's where, sort of going to Vox to extent it happens. But with Google+, like, what's going on here? With Google+, what I love about that is we can have longer chats back and forth. There is, of course, different groups you can join and get that expertise and resources, as well as, of course, Hangouts are there, which, that's just, to me, if I had to choose one tool that I would tell a teacher, this will change your practice, Google Hangouts would be that one tool. Simply because based upon anything you do in your classroom, you can always find an expert or another class to collaborate with, or bring that expert into your classroom to bring more depth or an outside additional voice to what you're doing.
Yeah.
And I love it. And particularly when you're talking about multiple classes, like I'm in the process of organizing a hangout for some SPED teachers. And the great thing is we don't have to get all of the kids in one room.
Right.
When I set this thing up, I'm going to invite each individual teacher in their classroom, and they have that. They don't have to worry about, oh my gosh, let's get everybody together, and what is this behavior going to be like when we get all these kids together in a group together? You can just class as normal, and
right.
and I that's what I love about it because of that, and I've seen some kids ask some amazing questions with experts. So Google, I love Twitter. It kind of waned on me for a little bit. I was like, I'm loving this Google Plus a little too much, because it's fantastic. But Google Plus is, for me, it's like Twitter and Google Plus are like the 1-2 punch for me.
Yeah, I think Google Hangouts have been a game changer for me this year, especially. I used them a little bit last year, but not as consistently. Okay, here's a fun fact. I was home today with a sick child, and my history classes were certainly going to be able to function on their own with the substitute supervising based on the activity that we were kind of rolling into from last week. But my student tech team, the Rockets Help Desk, we are collaborating on a session that we're going to be running at an upcoming conference on Thursday, and we really need to hunker down and build this presentation because we had a conference on this past Friday that was a different format than the one this Thursday, so we couldn't build the same presentation for both. We spent last week on that one, we're spending this week on this one, so I'm like, how can I miss a day when we're presenting on Thursday? But I don't have a choice. My daughter's sick. There's nothing I can do about it. So I messaged them and I said, make sure you sign into your Google Plus as soon as you get into our conference room where we normally meet. I'm going to call you on a Google Hangout. And I sat with them while my sick daughter played with Play-Doh. And I basically, we collaborated. We had a Google Slides presentation up that we were working on at the same time while we were doing the video chat. So I taught a class today via Google Hangout. So there you go. I was there, but I wasn't there. So Google Hangouts are not just about bringing experts into the class. It's about collaborative problem solving when you can't physically be in the same space. And I know I have students who are using it to work on group projects. It creates a lot of opportunities for collaboration. But I do think that if you want to bring the experts in from outside, sometimes the first contact with those experts happens on Twitter, and then you get to the Hangout after. So it is important to be able to leverage all of these tools together in the right way, and start with one so you feel comfortable before adding the others.
Oh yeah. Look, people, this has been great, as always, with Kerry. I don't even. Okay, I'm looking at the time now. The time has just flown by. It's been awesome.
Oh wow,
Uh,
yeah, we talked for a while.
just flown by. See, great podcast. Great podcast. So again, Kerry, I want to thank you for being a guest, and for those who are watching or watching in the future, I would like to thank you for watching the Dr. Will Show, and be on the lookout for this Saturday's episode in which I will interview the weird teacher about becoming a published author. So thanks everyone, and have a good night.
Good night.